Hi there guys, my name is Jacob and welcome back to the channel. So earlier this week I heard a quote and I thought it was a fascinating quote. It said, "Don't waste the time you don't have on the money you don't need." And I really got me thinking, don't waste the time you don't have on the money you don't need. And this was referencing people who get close to retirement and continue working, basically. People who've got enough money to retire, maybe in their 50s, maybe in their early 60s, and somehow they come to the decision that they're going to continue to work. And whether that is to stack more money, whether that is because they enjoy work or whatnot, but ultimately they continue to work, and it is at the detriment of other things that they would like to do in their lives, like travel, like spend more time with family, spend more time with friends, spend more time doing hobbies, things like that. Now, just before I go any further, guys, if you could just hit the like button and the subscribe button, I would really appreciate it. And there is even a link down in the description box that says buy me a coffee. And if you would like to buy me a coffee, I would really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Now, coming across this quote today was really funny because earlier this week I was sat watching a programme called Race Across the World, and I was watching it with my granddad, and it was the series where they travel across Canada. You might have seen it, it's on BBC, it's a pretty popular programme, but we were watching that, and out of nowhere my granddad said that he always wished that he could have taken a trip through the Canadian Rocky Mountains. There's a train trip that he always wanted to do, but he never got round to it. And I didn't know this about my granddad. He'd never mentioned this before. So I asked him, well, why didn't you take this trip? And, he basically said, life gets in the way, you focus on work and things like that throughout your life. And for one reason or another, he just never made it happen. And he's 85 now, he doesn't have a passport. So the likelihood is he's probably never going to make that trip happen. Now, my granddad is somebody who worked quite a bit longer than he really needed to. He worked up until the age of 65, but by his own admission, he probably could have retired closer to the age of 60. But he continued to work because, in his words, he said it's what everybody else did. Nobody took early retirement, so he didn't take early retirement. And that's a real shame. And hearing him say that he regrets not taking a trip to Canada, a trip that he himself described as a dream trip, it really saddened me a little bit, to be quite honest. And, I came away from the conversation feeling, quite down about it. And I did say to him that, well, if he's not going to go, that at some point in my lifetime, I will go on his behalf and I will do that trip that he never managed to do. And I 100% intend to make that happen. Canada's a place I've always wanted to go anyway. And knowing that my granddad had a dream trip planned that he never took, really makes me want to make that happen. So, I had a conversation with the wife and that is on our list of places to go. Coming back to the point, my granddad is a typical example of somebody who potentially wasted time working for extra money that he didn't need, because my granddad and my nan live a comfortable retirement. They both have the state pension and they both have decent private pensions. And they worked really hard for those pensions. They both worked, 40 plus year careers. So they very much deserve them. But could they have taken 5 years off their careers and enjoyed themselves and travelled for an extra 5 years? Well, I would argue, yes, they could have. And then if we compare that scenario to my father-in-law and mother-in-law, who both have managed to retire early, around the age of 50 to 55, and are currently in their 50s, enjoying many different trips and, hobbies and things like that they've always wanted to do, but because of work, you never get round to it. But they're quite different. They have decided to take early retirement on quite a minimal amount of income. They've kind of worked out what they need to live with a little bit of spare money that they know they can afford to do trips and things like that. Not lavish trips, but they can still make them happen. And that was their decision. They've decided to take early retirement. and get these trips done whilst they are fit and healthy. Now, both of them have said to me that, they thought about staying on at work because ultimately, the longer they stay on, the more comfortable they knew their retirement was going to be. But at the same time, the longer they stay, the less likely that they are able to get all these trips in. And they've seen their own parents, health deteriorate and things like that. And that is one of the reasons that they wanted to take early retirement, because they were both worried that they may follow in the footsteps health-wise as their own parents. And, their own parents, had quite a decline in health quite quickly. And it stopped them doing a lot of different things. So with that in mind, they took early retirement and are now enjoying those early years of, activity. They're fit and healthy and, they don't regret it. So two scenarios really, both in my family, where, one, you could say have worked probably too long and wasted too many years in work. And the other has decided to cut their career short, even though it may affect how comfortable they are in retirement, because they are prioritising those healthy, active years where they can enjoy those years, basically. So they may have less money going forward, but they can create memories and they can, tick things off their bucket list that they've always wanted to do. Now, I'll bring this to you just because I think it's very interesting to think about if you're somebody who's approaching your 50s, maybe 60s, and maybe you think you are, financially there or nearly there, where you think you could call it a day. Maybe have a real think about, whether it is worth calling it a day sooner rather than later, because a lot of people spend extra time in work that they don't need to, chasing extra money that they think they need, but they really don't need. And, years into retirement, you may look back and think, I stayed in work 2, 3, 4, 5 years too long. And if your health was to decline, would that become a regret? I'm not telling you what to do. It's just a thought. It's certainly something that has played on my mind since reading this quote and also having the conversation with my own granddad. I think if he had his time again, he probably would have retired sooner. And my nan definitely would have retired sooner as well. She's told me that before. But I guess, when people around you are staying in work, I guess there is that kind of social pressure to conform and do what everybody else is doing. But at the same time, it's your life and you've got to do what's best for you. You don't want to, get into your 80s and have regrets on things that you didn't manage to do, that full well you could have done. So it's definitely worth having to think about, I think. Right then, guys, I'll leave it there. If you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. If you could hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and guys, I will catch you in the next one.